continuing our discussion today with Dr. Larry Visser about God's call, God's work in his life, and Dr. Visser's work here at LaGrave. What all kind of went into that enriched your life?
There were actually 4 rounds. You had to record 3 or 4 pieces and send that to the committee in France. And I don't know how many entered the competition, probably over 100. And then about 40 or 50 are selected to travel to France, to Paris. And then there are 2 more elimination rounds in the city of Paris, various venues, where they keep eliminating competitors. And
based off of playing?
Yes, playing all the same pieces. All the competitors play the same pieces. And then the final round, 4 performers are chosen to play at the Cathedral of Chartres.
Wow.
Which is a real honor, and I made it to the final round. And I did not win the competition, but it was prize enough to be in the final 4
and
compete. And that was, again, God's way of validating my gifts, I think.
A lot of validation.
And, it was a wonderful experience, and a deepening faith experience as well, knowing this is where God wants me at the time, and that was an instrumental event in my formation as a musician.
Instrumental event.
No pun intended. So the call continued, but there were years of struggle too. It wasn't all fun things. After graduate school, I had my doctorate degree, and I had a job in the Methodist Church. It wasn't quite full-time. I knew I needed to move on, and yet I didn't know when or where that would happen next. So through prayer, I sought God's will. I decided to apply for some college teaching positions, thinking that's what many people do who have graduate degrees. And of course, I did not get those jobs, and that was disappointing at the time. Just seeking out God's will for the next chapter of life.
Being very direct with you right now.
Yes, right. And it took a little patience. 4 years later, God opened a door in that LaGrave's position opened up, and it was a very new position at that time. Maybe you didn't know that. LaGrave had used non-professional people to play the organ, amateurs who had other careers. This was a new step for this congregation to hire a classically trained professional musician to head up the music ministry. And it was enthusiastically supported by the whole congregation before I was called here and took the position.
Well, we know LaGrave very much values their music.
They do. And it was so clear to me that this was God's call to me to have the opportunity to minister in my own denomination to a large, growing, thriving congregation. At the time. We still are growing, and I find that very exciting. But at the time, 1999 is when I started, 20 years ago, it was a very growing congregation, and I viewed that as a very exciting opportunity.
That would be very
to minister and to continue work with Merle Munster, who I had known for many, many years at Calvin College. So that was God's call, and I had hoped at the time that would be a place, LaGrave would be a place where I could stay for many years.
And look at you now,
thankfully,
20 years later.
It has been that. So then one last thing, furthering God's call here, was the implementation shortly after I started. I think it was about a year or 2, I don't remember exactly, that we implemented 2 morning services.
Okay.
And when I was hired, my job was not quite full-time. It was about 2/3 or 3/4 time. And when we started 2 morning services, it was quite obvious that my position needed to turn into full-time.
You play a lot on Sundays.
So I do, and there's a lot of planning that goes behind the worship.
Yep.
And so even throughout my 20 years, God is still calling me and letting me know this is the place where I need you in ministry. And that's a comfort. Yeah. So again, it was not a single event. It was God working all those years from the very first piano lesson to this very day.
Yeah, a lot of affirmation and steps and even some closed doors.
Exactly. Exactly.
God's not afraid to close a door.
It's not all easy. There is struggle, there's wondering, but trusting in God and His will is so important. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that part of your
Yes.
story. So, one thing that I found interesting when I first came to the church was that your title is actually minister of music.
Mm-hmm.
And upon getting to know you, your background, there's no seminary in your background. It's all music, playing, performance.
Right.
How do you experience your position? How is your position as a minister of music different than, say, a director of music, which is what we find in most churches?
Yes, yes. The two terms, first of all, are pretty interchangeable in this field of church music. Many churches use director of music. Many choose minister. So they're interchangeable. Most church musicians are not ordained in a seminary. There are exceptions. But most get music degrees because that's what their job entails, playing music.
You play music, you read music, you spend all your time with music.
That's right, that's right. So I particularly am pleased that LaGrave chose Minister of Music for the title for a few reasons. First of all, I know the reason why they chose minister as opposed to director. It's because all of our ministers, all 5 of them, 6 I think if you count Christy, are on equal par. No one minister is more important than the other. We're all on equal par, and we work together as a team to do ministry in all of our respective areas, and I think that's important. So I've always valued that, that they put me on equal level with the other ministers, with my colleagues. Secondly, I think that a minister of music should view their position differently than a director. The primary reason is I think our role is not a performer. Okay. Yes, we're performing music, but our role is more importantly as a servant. You're serving a congregation.
Offering your gifts as a service.
Exactly, exactly. So I like to think of it as God working through me as an instrument, again, no pun intended, but as His instrument to minister to the congregation, to edify them in worship, but ultimately to give glory and honor to God, the God we are worshiping.